For years, John Moorlach has fought against special interests, sweetheart deals, and government waste. Sometimes he's won, sometimes he's lost, but always he's shaken things up in Orange County. And now he's doing the same in Sacramento. State Senator John Moorlach, next on Inside OC. Inside OC is brought to you by 5 Point. 5 Point is an independent real estate development company with assets under management across California. 5 Point is a proud sponsor of public television and community programming. Hi, I'm Rick Reiff. Welcome to Inside OC. John Moorlach has seen the future, and it's scary. In 1994, he warned that the incumbent treasurer's investments could bankrupt the county. Almost nobody listened, but Moorlach was right. Within months, the county filed the biggest municipal bankruptcy to that point in U.S. history. A few years later, Moorlach warned that the county would regret hefty pension increases it was giving public employees. Again, he was right. Not just Orange County, but cities and governments across the country are now raising taxes and cutting services to offset ever-growing employee obligations. His prescience, his financial expertise, and his tell-it-like-it-is attitude has made Moorlach popular with voters, but unpopular with many political insiders, ranging from union bosses to some fellow Republicans. Now, he's taking on Sacramento. Joining me, former Orange County Treasurer, former OC Supervisor, and first-term state senator, John Moorlach. Mr. Moorlach, good to have you on.
Mr. Reiff, thank you for the kind introduction.
You're quite all right, and happy birthday, young fella.
It's a big milestone. Thank you very much.
Which one would that be?
6-0.
6-0.
6-0.
60 home runs for Babe Ruth, 60 years for John Moorlach.
Started public life at age 38, running for treasurer against Bob Citron, and it's amazing how quickly the time can fly.
Wow. So now are you going to shave off your beard to celebrate?
I hadn't thought about doing that.
Let me ask you, have you ever shaved? I mean, have you ever shaved it off? I don't see, there is not a single picture of you that I have ever seen where you don't have a beard.
I started growing the beard 25 years ago because I was writing a book. And so I said, as soon as I finish writing this book, I will shave it. And I never finished the book. I did shave it for the campaign in '94. My handler said, you really should be clean shaven.
That's the first time you ran.
I shaved it
That's
for the campaign.
That's why you lost.
Probably.
Except, now isn't it true, I'm sure people have told you, John, a beard, you're a politician. That scares people, you know, it's not a... You know, very few politicians since Abraham Lincoln have had beards.
They'll tell you they'll cost you 5 points, you know, in the election cycle. But there are several in the Senate, excuse me, that wear beards. Senator
Hill.
Oh,
so it's coming back. Well, the ball players are wearing them now, so I guess it's coming back.
So we have a hirsutness caucus.
Okay. So, how's Sacramento going so far?
Well, I'm in the minority, but I'm having fun. So I didn't have any illusions. You know, I knew that it would be interesting. The good news is we're 14 out of 40 in the Senate, so we're just one over 1/3. So we can block a 2/3 bill when 2/3 is required. But I'm having fun getting to know all my colleagues on both sides of the aisle, enjoying good debates in committees. I serve on the Judiciary, where I'm vice chair. I serve on Governance and Finance with Senator Hertzberg as chair. I'm on Budget, Subcommittee 1, and I'm also on the Public Health Special Session Committee. So it's been very stimulating. When you have 20 years of experience, you know, 12 managing a rather substantial portfolio, but 8 as a supervisor, where you get to appreciate all the programs that the state does. I came into the Capitol pretty well trained, pretty well educated on almost all the subjects. So I think I'm offering a lot.
So what's different, or what's impressed you the most positively or negatively going from county government to the state?
Well, Orange County is definitely different than the rest of the state. So we're in a blue state, and Orange County is a red county. So being in the minority is a different drill. Being 5 Republicans to now 14 out of 40. But you know, it's all about relationships and working together, agreeing to disagree. But I'll still vote no on your bills, you know, and I know you'll vote no on mine, but at least we can do it amicably.
Yeah, in fact, there's been a couple of stories lately that for whatever reasons, speculation as to why there seems to be a little more collegiality between the two parties. And I'll swear every time there's a picture of you shaking hands with somebody, some Democrat. And what's that about?
Well, I'm one of the new senators that's eligible for the longer term limit period. So I can be there for 3 terms plus the 2 years I have now. So it's a long-term game.
So that's like
for me.
14 years you can be in the Senate.
Right. It's a long-term game. So let's build relationships. Let's work together. And when we disagree, let's do it amicably.
Is it going to make any difference in the policies of the state?
Who knows? But Senator Hertzberg came up to me one day, and
he's a Democrat.
He's a Democrat, former assembly leader, and he said, "John, we thought you'd be a difficult kind of person coming from Orange County, but you've been this and this and this." And he just went through like a half dozen positives. You've done this, you've done that. When you speak, it's to the point and quick. And everybody I'm talking to on my side of the aisle, they really enjoy working with you. So I think that goes a long way. When I get up and speak, I would expect then that they would respect what I have to say on certain topics, certainly if it relates to money management or budget, pensions. I'm sure that they sit back and say, okay, let's see what he's got to say. And I don't abuse my speaking privileges. Sure. So, I'm there to have fun, but like you said, shake it up and bring up points. I laughed last week. A lobbyist came up to me and said, you started asking questions about this particular bill, and they were great questions, but you turned them. You actually turned them, and they voted against the bill. And because everything's televised in Sacramento, so they're all watching. So I get 2 comments from the insiders. One, you actually read the bills, which I do. I'm trying to read everything. And 2, we really enjoy watching you now because you're asking questions in committee, questions no one's thinking of, but they make a lot of sense. So in that way, I think we're adding value and hopefully trying to improve bad bills if we can, or at least point out how silly they are.
There's a picture of you shaking hands with Assemblyman Adrin Nazarian, and that was an AIDS testing bill, and you were the only Republican to vote for it. So what was that about? Why didn't any other Republicans vote for it?
I don't know the details. My reading, I just concluded that what he was asking is that when you go in for, say, a health clinic, you fill in a form and they do blood tests. Well, I've been impressed, being almost 60, with what comes out of my blood tests as I deal with my personal physicians. So if you check the box where you can also be tested and they would look for AIDS, it seems to me that's an option you should have. I didn't find that offensive.
When I saw that you voted for it, I said, well, why would the Republicans? I know there's some things. Obviously there's issues where Republicans want to vote no, and they've got good, principled reasons for doing it. Was there any reason for everybody to vote no on that one?
I don't memorize what I read. We have staff for both the Republicans and the Democrats. We have caucus, and they prepare briefings, and they came to the conclusion that this should be opposed. So I did my own reading and review, and I just kind of said, no, this is not one I feel like I need to oppose, not knowing I would be the only Republican. What makes it interesting, Rick, is that on the other side of the aisle, they get the same kind of briefings, and when they're told to vote no, they vote no. And if they don't vote no, then they could lose committee positions. They could have another Democrat running against them in their upcoming election. They have a pretty rigid, system. Whereas on the Republican side,
so nobody came up to you.
Well, if you vote no like that again against, our recommendation, you're going to lose this or that. We're allowed to be very independent.
You think it's just they wouldn't dare say that to John Moorlach?
I don't know. And I don't know even quite what you mean by that. Yeah. But I voted for, I think it was AB 183, which would require police officers to keep track of the race of the person they pulled over. And so that way they would have data so they could see whether or not, as a percentage of the population, whether blacks were being pulled over or questioned or by police officers more than maybe their percentage of the population. I didn't have a problem with that. I know from being a supervisor in Orange County that a lot of fine black people in this county were having just serious difficulties being pulled over by our fine police services. So I voted for that, not knowing at all that I was the only Republican that voted for it. But the Black Caucus surrounded me and thanked me profusely for voting for something that I felt was a legitimate bill.
So maybe someday they'll return the favor.
Who knows? Yeah. Who knows? But at least you're not perceived as this staunch conservative, no on everything, which we've seen happen, and it doesn't work. So let's kind of really read into what's going on and be respectful of some of the bills. And hopefully when I do my bills, maybe they'll be a little more respectful. They at least will tell me when they vote against it, God, we're really sorry, but here's where we're at, and we understand what you're trying to do, and they're at least polite.
Yeah. Wow. So one of the causes you've already taken up is Caltrans, the state transportation agency. What have you got against Caltrans?
They are an easy target, aren't they? For me, it was very simple. We have the largest budget in state history that we approved, and we have to approve that budget by June 25, based on Prop 25. So what they've done is they've been able to adopt a budget in time so that legislators get paid. If you don't get it done in time, then you don't get paid. But now they say, well, we'll take care of other things in special session, which you can do, as long as you want. So here we have the biggest budget, and the governor saying, I still need money to fix roads. Well, when you look at the budget and you go back 12 years, you see that Caltrans has been funded at $10.5 billion a year. The state has not made Caltrans a priority. And then you look at the funding source and you see gas tax going up, billions of dollars, but the actual spending staying level. You sit there and say, the state has actually been taking our gas tax and reduced their skin in the game instead of, going up, to 15 billion or whatever it's spending. And they've taken that money away from us, and now they're blaming us that the roads are bad. So you say, okay, now where's that money been going? Well, it's been funding their pet projects, but mostly it's been funding the pension plan contribution increases. So to come to me and say, we need to raise your gas tax and we need to raise your car fees to pay for roads. And I'm going, wait a second, we've got the highest car tax, highest gas tax, and the worst roads. You guys, this is not the answer. Paying you more money is not the answer. And besides, you've actually stolen my money and not fixed my roads. You've been derelict. And so then you get reports. You get state legislative analyst comes out and says, the books of Caltrans are very hard to review, but we've determined that they have 3,500 engineers too many. Not 35, not 350, but 3,500 employees that don't have work to do. And that's just incredulous. How do you come to me?
One of them played golf.
Then another report came out this year from the state auditor saying that one played golf 55 days. In fact, the report said, I will golf as many days as I can. And you sit there and you say, what? Who's running this state? Who's the CEO? Who's the city manager? What's going on? State auditor in 2011 came out with a report and said 62% of Caltrans projects went over budget. I mean, this place needs to be reformed.
What's the solution?
Well, one, even the Democrats agree. We've got to find 30% efficiencies. I mean, if we all agree on that, we know Caltrans is mismanaged. And yet the governor just gives them a 7% raise. I mean, it's just incredulous when other cities and counties are having a difficult time finding money to pay any kind of raises. And then when you give a raise, you now exacerbate the pension problem. So we've got to start downsizing Caltrans. We've got to outsource more. We've got to be respectful of the money that comes in. We shouldn't be diverting it. I mean, we've just got to do the right things. It's very simple. We only have 4 seasons in this state, Rick. We both know what it's like in Wisconsin and when we visit the kids in Michigan. Yeah. They're keeping their roads in good shape.
Well, I think one of the points you made, outsourcing, that's where you hire an outside firm to do the work rather than having an employee in-house. And the advantage there is during downtimes, you don't have to contract out, and it's a way to save money. And that a lot of states, maybe half of their expenditures are outsourcing. California is like, what, under 5% or something?
10%.
10%.
10% is outsourced. Florida,
Whereas 50%,
Arizona,
yeah.
it's up to 80%. So that's for architects and engineers. So we could be so much more efficient. And you look at their demographics of the department of some 20,000 employees, 54% of them are near retirement age. So to say to them, let's start transitioning over to more outsourcing, this is a no-brainer. This is a management 101. And management didn't come and oppose my bill. It was the union that came. It was the professional engineers in California government that, their acronym, they were the ones that argued against my bill. And they were untruthful in the facts that they gave, but it didn't matter. Once they killed my bill in committee, that's all they had to do. No one comes back and says, oh, time out, you guys actually went out of bounds.
So I would be, are you frustrated by this? Is there any chance the state is going to change its policy on Caltrans?
Well, it reflects another component of government, and that is that the public employee unions really run the state. We call them the B team. They've been there. They'll be there when I'm there, and they'll be there when I'm gone. And because of term limits, I'm convinced they've kind of said, we can wait out any of these legislators. They're going to be gone in 6 years. That's not very long, so you can wait everybody out. And I don't see anyone taking a proactive position to try and run efficient departments. Now, at the County of Orange, we had internal audits. We had a performance audit department. Rick, you've watched this totally decimate the planning department because it wasn't running properly. We changed management. When the taxpayers came to us and said, your department isn't running properly, we went in and we found the errors and we changed the place and said, your job is not to just get a paycheck, your job is customer service. We did it with HR. I mean, we had a CEO resign over the whole HR part of so we took proactive positions and stances with management, said to the CEO, fix things, but I don't see that.
That must be frustrating. So you're shining a light on this stuff. And, frankly, when you came out on the Caltrans stuff, there was some coverage in the media, but it wasn't overwhelming.
Well, but they come to me. So when state auditor says, hey, you got a guy who's golfing 55 days, Channel 10 ABC, they call for me, And I say, well, of course he's golfing. What else is there to do?
That was a good line. So, talking about the pensions in Orange County before you left the supervisor position, you were involved in this thing called COIN. And explain briefly, please, COIN and what's happened with the legislature regarding that.
Well, it's called Civic Openness in Negotiations, and it was the brainchild of Steve Minzinger, who's now the mayor of Costa Mesa. And someone called and said, why haven't you adopted that at the county? And so I said, yeah, why not? And so we made it an initiative. The unions in the public sector abide by a law called Myers-Milius-Brown. It already allows for openness and transparency.
The COIN was to open up the contract negotiations to the public. So no more negotiating behind closed doors. The public gets to see the negotiation, who's proposing what.
And so it's already there in law. And so COIN said, okay, we want to be more transparent. Every offer you put on the table and every offer we put on the table is made public. Because right now everything's done in closed session, and we have pension problems, we have retiree medical problems, we have salary problems because everything was done in closed session with no public analysis at all, and then boom, the city council or the school board or the supervisors voted for it, and boom, you live with it. It's like it's permanent. You can't get out of it. How do you fix that? Is get more daylight, get the negotiations out there, because what the public doesn't know is what these unions walk into the negotiating room with, all their asks. Like, we want 20% raises, we want more holidays, we want, all these things. And you go, if you could just reveal that to the public, they go, what is this nonsense? They wouldn't pull those kinds of shenanigans because they can know if they can go start at 20, maybe a compromise is 10 when we can't even afford 3, right? So so that's what we did. And it was left alone in Costa Mesa. And so they decided to have a little fun with it in Orange County when we adopted it. It certainly upset the major union leaders. And they took it to the public employee retirement, PERB, anyway, PERB, Public Employee Relations Board. And they also recruited a Democratic senator to try and really give a poison pill to any municipality that adopted COIN. But it's real simple. Openness, be able to hire outside negotiators. Most cities and counties use their internal managers who benefit from what they're negotiating. So there's not a
But I thought what
safety
was
valve.
interestingly, they went to a state lawmaker to pass a state law. You call it a poison pill, but on the surface, it sounded like a reasonable thing. If you're going to open up the employee negotiations, open up your bidding processes. And before you give a huge contract to a corporation, lay it all out there. What's wrong with that?
There's nothing maybe wrong with it from a perception standpoint, but you don't have multiple reports telling you that contracts obtained by municipalities have been done inappropriately, or there was maybe something inappropriate that created massive fiscal problems.
Right, but then what's wrong with it? But then why not just have it in the open? In other words,
but it has been in the open. I mean, you go through an RFP process, you go through
but if that's
a bidding
the case,
process,
then there's no harm. What would be the harm in this bill?
Because it puts so many onerous restrictions on timelines, on factors for costing, for requiring outside people to come in. That it ties your hands so severely that it is too onerous to actually utilize what SB 331 is providing. What makes it really cheap is that it doesn't require everyone to do it. I mean, if these were great ideas, then you would implement it across the board, no better, no worse. But what SB 331 requires is so onerous and so over the top. It's almost comical if you were to look at it and compare it side by side with what's going on now. That you know that it was just
so
a way to frustrate.
So it only applies to those counties that would adopt COIN.
Or cities.
So it's a great idea for those counties, but not a great idea for the vast majority of counties that don't have openness.
It's a union bash. They just had a good time and said, okay, they're always black in kneecaps, right? And so this was a kneecap move and very disingenuous.
What do you think the biggest issue is facing Orange County?
Orange County?
Yeah.
As opposed to the state?
Well, give me both.
Well,
maybe
let's
it's the same
state.
thing, but
I mean,
all
the
right,
state has an unrestricted net deficit of $117 billion on its audited financial statements, which puts us in about 46th place of all the states. Now, you know Illinois, I mean, it's probably in last place. They can't even pay their lottery winners on time. So you can kind of look at Illinois and see what California is going to be like. So when we talk about biggest budgets, looking for more taxes, we are deep in debt. We are upside down so far. Our pension liabilities are over $105 billion in CalPERS, and CalSTRS has got a similar large number. We have deferred maintenance of over $59 billion. We have retiree medical of over $72 billion.
Now you throw out
we've got serious financial problems, and so I'm an accountant, CPA.
You are an accountant. You kind of sound like one there when you're ticking it off. And but isn't that the political problem? You just ticked off all these things, and does the average person, does it get through? First of all, so what? What does it mean? In other words, a person who says, "What does all this mean to me?" All this talk about unfunded and all that kind of thing. What does it mean?
Well, for unfunded liabilities, it's like a mortgage. You kind of know we got to pay this off in 30 years. So once we know what the mortgage amount is, now we can figure out what the payment is. So now we've got these large payments that have to be made. Well, if you change the interest rate, the payments will change and it'll be, not attractive. So unions don't want to change the assumptions because they can't get raises if you're putting more into the pension plan or the retiree medical. So it squeezes everything else out of the budget, and like your roads, like necessary public services. We're squeezing it all out just to take care of employees for past year's services. This is not for future costs. This is for prior services, and this is affecting everyone. We've seen Detroit go into Chapter 9 bankruptcy. San Bernardino, city of Stockton. It's been their pension liabilities, and I just want to avoid that from happening
What do you think is going to happen?
In the state.
What do you think is going to happen? Is this problem going to get solved, or are we just going to go bankrupt?
Well, there are, say, 5 answers to that. The obvious one for the legislature is to raise taxes. Well, we're already the highest tax state in the nation, so that's going to be difficult, but we did it with Prop 30, and now they're talking about renewing it and adding some other taxes. We can cut expenses, and I don't see that as having been fully reviewed. We can restructure our debt. Might be an idea with low interest rates, who knows? And what can we sell? You know, these are the same things that people have to do. And how do we raise our income? How do we reduce our expenses?
You gave me 4.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Five is who can we sue? Who brought us here? And that's what Orange County did 20 years ago.
And we end on that note. John, thanks so much.
Thank you, Rick.
Okay. That's it for now. Thanks to my guest, State Senator John Moorlach. You can watch this show and past shows by going to pbssocal.org or rickreiff.com. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again on Inside OC. Inside OC is brought to you by 5 Point. 5 Point is an independent real estate development company with assets under management across California. 5 Point is a proud sponsor of public television and community programming.